Today brings us to Book 6, The Princess at the River. In Book 5, if you'll remember, Odysseus washes up on shore and he's full of seaweed and brine, and he is swollen from head to foot because of being in the salt water and the seawater for 20 days. The seawater is gushing from his mouth and his nostrils. He can barely take a breath. His lungs are full. And he's completely worn out and exhausted. He slept in a leaf bed last night. And so he's on this shore, and what's so interesting is that this is the shore where he is going to, the shore of the Ascarians, where he's going to get the most help and the best Xenia in order to help him get back home. The problem is that he's on the shore completely naked. He has no clothes on, and he looks like a crazy man. So, and the other thing is that's important to remember, he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what island he's on. He doesn't know if he's going to get taken captive again. He doesn't know if there's witches and sorcery going on here. He doesn't know if they're allies of Troy. He doesn't know anything. So he also can't say, he cannot divulge who he is. He cannot, because he doesn't know how people are going to treat him. He also doesn't know if people know who he is. I mean, he's left Troy. He has no idea if anyone, if he would say, I'm Odysseus from Ithaca who fought in Troy, people on this island might say, who? Who cares? And we've never heard of you, because maybe the story of Troy has changed. You know, it's been 20 years. So who knows if was seen as a great warrior. So how is Athena going to work her magic so that somebody is going to find him on the shore and help him? And what's interesting is she will go into the town, and there's a princess that's a character, the main character in Book 6, and her name is Nausicaa, and she's just the most delightful little character in ancient Greek literature. And when I say little, I mean young. She's marrying age, so she's probably about 14 or 15, which might sound a little, maybe even 16, which might sound a little off-putting to some of you. But she's definitely in marrying age, and I'm going to let you read the beginning of the passage so that you can see how she actually gets down to the shore. She's going to have some, I'll paraphrase it for you. Athena will visit her in a dream. It's going to be time for her to wash her wedding garments. She's going to go ask her parents for permission to go down to the shore and wash her garments to be ready to get married to someone. And the parents are going to be really excited and really delighted about that. I'll let you work your way into that on page 99 and all the way to, all the way to 102. Okay, that's where I'm going to let you, read that. Now she's going to go down to the seashore with her maidens that are accompanying her. And one of the things to remember that in Greek mythology, the seashore is where a lot of dangerous things happen. When young maidens go to the seashore, a lot of times they can get abducted, they can be taken advantage of. And so it's a little bit of a scary place. So we're going to see this encounter between this Nausicaa, the princess, and this naked, scary, crazy-looking man who's just washed up from the ocean, and we'll see this encounter. So she goes down to the sea, and on page 102, if you want to go to line 110. Actually, let's back up to like 106. All right, they were putting out they were letting the sun dry their linen on the shore. Princes and maids delighted in that feast. Then putting off their veils, they ran and passed a ball to a rhythmic beat. Nausicaa flashing first with her white arms. She's going to be called, Nausicaa with white arms. That's her epithet. So Artemis goes flying after her arrows flown. So is the epic simile. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but an epic simile will give us something that it's comparing to, and then it may say so or just, or it may not even have just or so. We just have to pay attention to the comparison. So here's Nausicaa, and they're tossing a ball back and forth to her maids. So Artemis goes flying after her arrows flown down some tremendous valley side. Tygidos, Erymanthus chasing the mountain goats or ghosting deer, with nymphs of the wild places flanking her. And Leto's heart delights to see them running, for taller by a head than nymphs can be, the goddess shows more stately, all being beautiful. So one could tell the princess from the maids. So what we have here is this lovely description of Artemis and what it looks like when the goddess Artemis goes running through the fields with her maidens. And then the bard says, so, or in the same way, one could tell the princess apart from the maids, because the princess was so much taller, more athletic, more beautiful. She's definitely set apart from the rest. That's important to know, because Odysseus is going to want to know who to speak to when he encounters this little group of girls, of women, young women. Soon it was time, she knew, for riding homeward, mules to be harnessed, linen folded smooth, but the gray-eyed goddess Athena made her tarry, so that Odysseus might behold her beauty and win her guidance to the town. It happened when the king's daughter threw her ball offline and missed, and put it in the whirling stream. So she throws the ball, it passes the maids, it drops in the stream, at which they all gave such a shout. Odysseus awoke and sat up, saying to himself, so it's going beyond everybody. They can't see where it is. It splashes next to Odysseus, and the splash and the sound of the maidens kind of shouting and playing awakens him. Now this is what he says. These 3 lines are pretty key. Now by my life, mankind again. But who? Savages are they, strangers to courtesy, or gentlefolk who know and fear the gods? All right, this is a line that we have heard for the first time here. He will say these formulaic lines 2 other places. And basically what he's asking is, what am I going to encounter on this island, in this place? Are they savages? Are they strangers to courtesy? Or are they gentlefolk who know and fear the gods? Okay, because he doesn't know. That was a lusty cry of tall young girls, most like the cry of nymphs who haunt the peaks and springs of brooks and inland grassy places. Or am I amid people of human speech? Do you see he's still talking to himself? Up again, man, and let me see for myself. One of the funnest things about Book 5 and Book 6, and especially as we go through this, is to hear Odysseus constantly talking to himself. We get those inner thoughts and dialogues, which is the importance of this third-person omniscient narrator that the bard is presenting. You know, when he was swirling around in the sea, and he was thinking, you know, now I'm about to die. I might as well just let myself go. It would have been better for me to die on the fields of Troy than to go through this, what I'm going through, being tossed about in the ocean. So we hear all of those inner dialogues. So now he's like, well, that was a cry of some young girls. Must be the nymphs. In other words, must be other fairies or those lesser goddesses or lesser immortals. So he doesn't know that he's among humans yet, because that's what he's asking. Is it nymphs, or am I amid people of human speech? So now he's going to say, let me see for myself. Top of 103. He pushed aside the bushes, breaking off with his great hand a single branch of olive, whose leaves might shield him in his nakedness. So what's he going to do? How's he going to approach these women being totally naked at the seashore? He reaches up, he grabs an olive branch, and he puts the leaf over him, and he kind of walks out to these women. It's a little awkward. So came out rustling like a mountain lion. Now watch this description. Rain drenched, wind buffeted, but in his might at ease with burning eyes. Okay, look at this. The epic simile is describing a predator. So we have to look at it from the young girl's perspective. What do they see coming at them? Like a mountain lion, rain-drenched, wind buffeted, but in his might at ease with burning eyes, who prowls among the herds or flocks or after game, his hungry belly taking him near stout homesteads for his prey. Odysseus had this look in his rough skin, advancing on the girls with pretty braids, and he was driven on by hunger too. Streaked with brine and swollen, he terrified them so that they fled this way and that. All right, we get a picture of this guy who looks really scary, walking, trying to cover his nakedness. And at the same time, what the bard is doing is he's presenting a sense of danger here. He could have presented any kind of epic simile, but the tone in this simile is definitely associated with this image of a threat, of danger, of a hungry mountain lion looking for prey, ready to pounce. And so it terrifies the maids, and they all run this way and that. Only Alcinous' daughter stood her ground, being given a bold heart by Athena and steady knees. She faced him waiting, and Odysseus came debating inwardly what should he do. Okay, he's like, what should I do? Should I embrace this beauty's knees and supplication, or stand apart and use honeyed speech? And using honeyed speech, inquire the way to town and beg some clothing. So he's like, should I? So in ancient times, you would run and throw your arms around the knees of the king or the queen to ask for mercy. And he's thinking, is that what I should do? Should I run and throw my arms around her knees and beg for mercy? And or should I just stand far off and try to use some sweet speech and ask how to get to town and maybe borrow some clothing? In his swift reckoning, he thought it best to trust in words to please her and keep away. He might anger the girl touching her knees. Now, what we're going to find here in just a minute is, remember, there's this caution. So he has that hallmark character of caution. And now we're going to see his rhetoric at work with Nausicaa. What is he going to say? So he began and let the soft words fall. Mistress, please, are you divine or mortal? If one of those who dwell in the wide heaven, you are most near to Artemis, I should say, great Zeus's daughter, in your grace and presence. Okay, why is this so important here? He just says, are you a goddess or are you mortal? That's a great pickup line. But here's the thing. Who's he going to compare her to? Now, he's being the great tactician. He's being the strategist by saying, you are most near to Artemis. In other words, you're most like the goddess of the huntress, one of the Vestal virgins, but she is the most militant about her purity, her chastity, her virginity. There's a story that's told in Greek mythology that a prince was on a hunt with his men, and he was on his horses and with his dogs and his men hunting for a stag. And, a stag is the deer with the horns, whatever, and a mythological character. And they go through the forests, and the prince on his horse sees the stag go through these trees, and he goes through and he comes upon a clearing. Well, in the clearing is Artemis, the goddess, bathing. And she stands up, and he catches just a glimpse, a quick glimpse of her backside as she turns around and sees him looking at her. She, as a consequence for him seeing her nakedness, she turns him into a stag. Well, all of a sudden, here come the men, his men, with his dogs, and the dogs pounce on him, and they start ripping him to shreds. But Artemis has kept his mind completely intact. And so the men are standing around saying, boy, I wonder where the prince is, because he would sure enjoy this at the same time that the dogs are ripping the stag apart or ripping this prince apart. So that's how militant she is about her chastity and purity. So if he was ever going to use a comparison to a goddess, that would be the perfect one. He's not going to say, hey, I don't want you to worry. I know I'm looking a little sketchy here, and I'm not going to rape you. Well, what's that going to put in her mind? He can't do that. So he says, you are most near to Artemis, I should say, great Zeus's daughter, in your grace and presence. If you are one of earth's inhabitants, if you are immortal, how blessed your father and your gentle mother, blessed all your kin. I know what happiness must send the warm tears to their eyes each time they see their wondrous child go to the dancing. But one man's destiny is more than blessed. Oh, whose destiny, whose fate is more than blessed? He who prevails and takes you as a bride. So now he's really pouring on the flattery. It's the one who gets you as the bride that's going to be blessed among all. So look at his flattering speech. He's really his speech has to overcome the way he looks. Never have I laid eyes on equal beauty such as yours in man or woman. I'm hushed indeed. Oh, I'm speechless. But so fair one time, I thought a young palm tree, top of 104, at Delos near the altar of Apollo. I had troops under me when I was there on the sea route that later brought me grief. But that slim palm tree filled my heart with wonder. Never came shoot from earth so beautiful. So now, my lady, I stand in awe so great, I cannot take your knees. All right, let's see what he's doing here. He's saying that he's a God-fearing, God-worshiping man because he's been to the island and to the altar of Apollo. He says, I had troops under me, so I'm a captain when I was there on that sea route. But that slim palm filled my heart with wonder. So he's a traveling man. He's a captain with troops. And now he's going to say, I never saw anything so great. And that's what you remind me of, is the beauty of this slender palm tree, that I cannot take your knees. So he's saying, I would take your knees if I could, but I'm so hushed by your beauty and so silenced. And now he starts his plea. So do you see how he's working his audience? Remember, rhetoric is crafting your speech to appeal to your audience, especially in order to get what you need. He needs a ship home. And yet my case is desperate. 20 days yesterday in the wine-dark sea, on the ever-lunging swell, under gale winds, getting away from the island of Ogygia. And now the terror of storm has left me stranded. Now he says, island of Ogygia. She knows who lives there. She'll know Calypso lives there. And now the terror of storm has left me stranded upon this shore, with more blows yet to suffer. I must believe before the gods relent. Mistress, do me a kindness. After much weary toil I come to you, and you are the first soul I have seen. I know no others here. Direct me to the town. Give me a rag that I can throw around me, some cloth or wrapping that you brought along, and may the gods accomplish your desire, a home, a husband, and harmonious converse with him. The best thing in the world being a strong house held in serenity, where man and wife agree. Woe to their enemies, joy to their friends, but all this they know best. Here's a comment about what Odysseus thinks about marriage. Even after all these 20 years he's been gone away from his wife. The best thing in the world is a strong house held in peace, where man and wife agree, where there's good conversation between them, between the husband and the wife, where there's harmony and a strong home. The enemies can't stand against them, and their friends are filled with joy over their marriage. Then she of the white arms, Nausicaa, replied, Stranger, there is no quirk or evil in you that I can see. You know Zeus metes out fortune to good and bad men as it pleases him. Hardship he sent to you, and you must bear it. But now that you have taken refuge here, you shall not lack for clothing or any other comfort due to a poor man in distress. The town lies this way, and the men are called Phaeacians who own the land and city. I am daughter to the prince Alcinous, by whom the power of our people stands. Turning, she called out to her maids in waiting, Stay with me. Does the sight of a man scare you? Or do you take this one for an enemy? Why, there's no fool so brash, and never will be, as to bring war or pillage to this coast. For we are dear to the immortal gods, living here in the sea that rolls forever, distant from other lands and other men. They're way far off, the Phaeacians are, on this island of Scheria. But they're relatives, their distant relatives, have a relationship to the gods. And so and if we look here, never will be as to bring war or pillage to this coast. In other words, nothing's going to happen to them because they are protected. The other thing that the Phaeacians are known for is their Xenia. They are proud of the fact that they Whoever needs anything, they give them whatever they need and send them on their way. So we will see that this is a hallmark of this island. He has landed on probably the best possible island that he could have, where he's going to get the best possible zinnia. No, this man is a castaway, poor fellow. We must take care of him. Strangers and beggars come from Zeus. A small gift, then, is friendly. Give our new guest some food and drink, and take him into the river out of the wind to bathe. Okay, they stood up now and called to one another to go on back. Quite soon they led Odysseus under the riverbank as they were bidden, and there they laid out a tunic and a cloak, and gave him olive oil in the golden flask. Here, they said, go bathe in the flowing water. But heard now from that kingly man Odysseus, maids, he said, keep away a little, let me wash the brine from my own back, and rub on plenty of oil. It is long since my anointing. I take no bath, however, where you can see me, naked, before young girls with pretty braids. So remember how we've seen Telemachus and Pisistratus be bathed by the maidservants of Nestor and Menelaus? Well, what he's saying here, he's going to make sure that there will be no way for anybody to misunderstand him. He doesn't want to put himself in any light where his integrity might be compromised. So he asked the maids to stand away from him. He's going to bathe himself, he's going to anoint himself with oil, and then he will present himself to the princess. They left him then and went to tell the princess. And now Odysseus, dousing in the river, scrubbed the coat of brine from back and shoulders, and rinsed the clot of sea spume from his hair, got himself all rubbed down from head to foot. Then he put on the clothes the princess gave him. It's so funny, the only clothes she has there are her bridal clothes. So he's putting on some kind of white wedding tunic, which is going to be interesting when he shows up at the palace to see the queen who made the clothes for her daughter. That's going to be interesting. How do you explain that one? Where you, all of a sudden, you show up at the door of this daughter's house wearing her clothes. Athena lent a hand, making him seem taller and massive too, with crisping hair and curls like petals of wild hyacinth, but all red golden. Now let's listen to this. So this is what's so funny. Athena's going to make him more beautiful, more massive. His hair is going to be all done perfectly. It's going to be like he's coming out of this, this magazine, like a GQ magazine or something, Men's Health, I don't know. Think of gold infused, here's the epic simile. Think of gold infused on silver by a craftsman, whose fine art Hephaestus taught him, or Athena, one whose work moves to delight. Just so she lavished beauty over Odysseus' head and shoulders. Then he went down to sit on the sea beach in his new splendor. There the girl regarded him, and after a time she said to the maids beside her, My gentlewomen, I have a thing to tell you. The Olympian gods cannot be all averse to this man's coming here among our islanders. Uncouth he seemed, I thought so too before, but now he looks like one of heaven's people. I wish my husband could be fine as he, and glad to stay forever on Scheria. Okay, now this might seem totally bizarre to you, that this young girl would think that Odysseus, this man, might be a potential husband for her because he's so much older. However, we have to remember that in ancient Greece, it's all about the marriage. It's all about the partnership. And so he looks like a pretty fine catch as he walks out of the river. The Princess Nausicaa now turned aside to fold her linens. In the pretty cart she stowed them, put the mule team under harness, mounted the driver's seat, and then looked down to say with cheerful prompting to Odysseus, Up with you now, friend, back to town we go, and I shall send you in before my father, who is wondrous wise. There in our house with him, you'll meet the noblest of the Phaeacians. You have good sense, I think. Here's how to do it. Now I'm going to tell you how to follow me into town. While we go through the countryside and farmland, stay with my maids behind the wagon, walking briskly enough to follow where I lead. But near the town, well, there's a wall with towers around the aisle and beautiful ship basins right and left of the causeway of approach. Seagoing craft are beached beside the road, each on its launching ways. The agora, the outside area with fieldstone benches bedded in the earth, lies either side Poseidon's shrine, for there men are at work on pitch black hulls and rigging, cables and sails and tapering of oars. They are a seafaring people, so they have the fastest ships, the best ships, and the best oarsmen. The archer's craft is not for the Phaeacians. They're not bow and arrow people, warriors, but ship designing, modes of oaring cutters in which they love to cross the foaming sea. That's what they're known for. From these fellows I will have no salty talk, no gossip later. Now this is hilarious. She is equally skilled in rhetoric at her young age. Now watch what she says to Odysseus. These shipmen, as I walk by them, I won't have any gossip from them or salty talk. Plenty are insolent. Now listen, and some sea dog might say after we passed, who is this handsome stranger trailing Nausicaa? Where did she find him? Will he be her husband? Okay, so watch what she's saying. She's saying, I wonder if one of these sea dogs would say something like that. She's totally flirting. Women don't choose their husbands. Girls don't choose their husbands. But what she's doing, she's actually flirting enough to make an offer of marriage to him without doing it so that no one can accuse her of it. That's how clever she is. Who is this handsome stranger trailing Nausicaa? Where did she find him? Will she be her husband? Or is she being hospitable to some rover come off his ship from lands across the sea, there being no lands near? A god, maybe, a god from heaven, the answer to her prayer descending now to make her his forever? Better if she roamed and found a husband somewhere else. None of our own will suit her, though many come to court her, and those the best. This is the way they might make light of me, and I myself should hold it shame for any girl to flout her own dear parents, taking up with a man before her marriage. If you unpack this, it's actually really hysterical, because in the same way he said, are you divine or mortal? Well, she's turning it right back on him by saying, what if these men who are talking about me walking with a stranger say, oh, is he a god maybe? Is he a god from heaven? Is he the answer to her prayer? And then look what she says. Oh, it's a good thing she's gone somewhere else to get a husband, because no one here will suit her, though many come to court her, and the best of all the men. So now he knows that she's been courted by many a man already, and the best of the men, but no one is good enough for her. Note well now what I say, friend, and your chances are excellent. This is her now talking to Odysseus. Now she's stopped talking about what these other men might say and talking to Odysseus. And your chances are excellent for safe conduct from my father. You'll find black poplars in a roadside park around a meadow and fountain, all Athena's. But father has a garden in the place, this within earshot of the city wall. Go in there and sit down, giving us time to pass through town and reach my father's house. And when you can imagine we're at home, then take the road into the city, asking directions to the palace of Alcinous. You'll find it easily. Any small boy can take you there. No family has a mansion half so grand as he does, being king. As soon as you are safe inside, cross over and go straight into the Megaron to find my mother. She'll be there in the firelight before a column with her maids in shadow, spinning a wool dyed richly as the sea. My father's great chair faces the fire too. There like a god he sits and takes his wine. Go past him, cast yourself before my mother, embrace her knees, and you may wake up soon at home, rejoicing though your home be far. On mother's feeling much depends. If she looks on you kindly, you shall see your friends under your own roof in your father's country. It's really interesting. Homer, in a time of ancient Greek culture, writes very strong women into his narrative. We've got Penelope, we've got Calypso, we've got Nausicaa, and we've got Arete, who is the wife of Alcinous, Queen Arete. So it's a beautiful way to see that in Greek culture, Homer is holding up the power and the value of women in this culture. At this she raised her glistening whip, lashing the team into a run. They left the river, cantering beautifully, then trotted smartly. But then she reined them in, spared the whip so that her maids could follow with Odysseus. The sun was going down when they went by Athena's grove. Here then Odysseus rested, and lifted up his prayer to Zeus his daughter. Hear me, unwearied child of royal Zeus. Oh, listen to me now, thou so aloof, while the earth shaker wrecked and battered me. May I find love and mercy among these people. He prayed for that, and Pallas Athena heard him, although in deference to her father's brother Poseidon, she would not show her true form to Odysseus, at whom Poseidon smoldered on until the kingly man came home to his own shore. In other words, Poseidon's still going to hold out for him until Odysseus gets home. Okay, there we have book 6. Books 7 and 8 will be Odysseus going into the courtyard of Arete and Alcinous. Book 7 is going to show this glorious area. And then book 8 will take us to the interaction with the king and his people. We will see athletic events that the Olympics were based on. We'll see how Odysseus fares when one of the young men says, he's too old to do anything. We'll see what he does. And then we'll see what happens when the blind bard sings 3 important songs, the last one being the most important, and how Odysseus responds to the songs sung in book 8. After book 8, we will then hear Odysseus recount the tales, his famous wanderings in books 9 through 12, where we'll flash back to see, to hear about those 3 years where he was bopping around the Mediterranean Sea trying to get home, and Poseidon kept holding him back, and then how he finally ended up on Calypso's island. That brings us to page 142, books 9 through 12 will be to page, 225, and then we're more than halfway through the book, the first 12 books being the adventures of Odysseus as he tries to come home. The last half of the book, books 13 to 24, being his 3 days back on Ithaca.